The outcast species seeks sanctuary in humanity. Best HFY sci-fi stories. In the cold expanse of the galaxy, far from the well-lit paths of prosperous civilizations, there existed a species unlike any other. The Valorians, a race of once powerful beings, had suffered the wrath of their own hubris. They were a species born of superior intelligence, incredible resilience, and a deep well of ambition. Their technology was unmatched. Their cities gleamed like jewels, and their armies were as vast as the stars themselves. But all of it came crashing down in an instant. A long-forgotten war, buried beneath layers of time, had resurfaced. Their planet's core destabilized due to an ancient weapon unleashed by a faction that wanted to control the galaxy. Unable to undo the damage, the Valorians fled. With their once thriving world turned to ash, they sought refuge in the deepest corners of space. However, there was nowhere to go. That is until they found Earth. July 21st, 2115, Earth orbit. The Valorian scout ship silently approached the planet. Its design was sleek, with shimmering metallic surfaces that reflected the distant stars. The ship was small, no more than a few 100 feet long, but it carried the collective hopes of an entire species. Captain Rin Vath, the leader of the Valorian remnant, gazed at Earth's blue oceans and green continents from the cockpit of the ship. It had taken them years to reach this point, to find this new world, a world so different, yet so similar to their own once thriving home. Earth was filled with life, much of it primitive. But there was something unique about humanity. The species on this planet were still young, still in their infancy compared to the other galactic civilizations. Yet, there was something in their culture, their resilience, that reminded the Valorians of their own past, a time before the arrogance and pride that had led to their downfall. "Captain, we are in range. Shall we initiate contact?" asked Varen, Rin's second-in-command. Rin hesitated for a moment. The Valorians had seen many species fall to the endless wars of the galaxy, often due to their own inability to understand other cultures. The Valorians had once believed they were superior to all. Now, they were outcasts. To approach a species like humanity, still mired in its own battles, could be dangerous, but it was their only option. "Yes," Rin said firmly, "we must." The Valorians initiated the signal. A coded transmission designed to break through Earth's military frequencies. They had no intention of inciting fear, only a peaceful message. After all, Earth's greatest strength wasn't its technology or its armies, it was humanity's heart. Earth, United Nations Command, 2115. Admiral Carla Hughes sat at the head of the table, her fingers poised above the console as she stared at the unexpected signal that had just pierced through Earth's most secure networks. The transmission was not from any known species, nor did it resemble anything in their existing records. The message was simple, but profound. "We come in peace. We seek sanctuary." For a long moment, no one spoke. The room was filled with tension as every military leader, scientist, and diplomat processed the weight of the message. Humanity had long been at war with itself, but it had never faced a threat or an opportunity like this. "We can't just let them in," General Marcus Blackwood said, his voice filled with concern. "What if it's a trick? What if this is just another invasion?" Admiral Hughes turned to him with a level gaze. "It might be, but it might also be a plea for help. Either way, we need to understand who they are, why they're here, and what they want." The debate raged on for hours, but in the end, it was humanity's very nature that shaped the decision. The world's leaders chose to open their doors, cautiously, but with hope. First contact, aboard the Valorian ship. The Valorian ship descended toward Earth's surface, landing in a remote desert region, far from major population centers. A group of representatives was chosen to meet the outcasts. Rin Vath, along with her most trusted officers, exited the ship and approached the human delegation. The humans were armed, but their posture was not hostile. The fear in their eyes was clear, but there was something else too, a glimmer of curiosity. Admiral Hughes was the first to speak. "I am Admiral Carla Hughes of Earth's United Nations. You said you seek sanctuary. Can you tell us why?" Rin's voice was steady, though her eyes betrayed a deep sadness. "We are the Valorians. Once, we ruled the stars, but we were brought to ruin by our own arrogance. Now we have no home, no future. We come to you, not as conquerors, but as beggars. We seek refuge. The humans listened, and for the first time in a long while, something sparked in their hearts. A species that had once been taught to distrust all others now saw the possibility of compassion, of solidarity. They understood the pain of losing everything, for humanity had nearly destroyed itself in the past. Perhaps they could help these strangers from the stars. Months later, the Valorians were given sanctuary on Earth. But what began as an act of mercy soon blossomed into something more. The Valorians shared their vast knowledge of technology, helping to repair Earth's environmental crises, cure diseases, and improve the human condition. In return, humanity showed the Valorians something they had forgotten: the power of community, of hope, and the strength that comes from embracing the unknown. The two species grew together, their futures intertwined. The Valorians learned that strength was not just in power, but in humility, and humanity, with its imperfect but resilient heart, found in the Valorians a new purpose: to protect, to learn, and to build a better world, not just for themselves, but for all who needed refuge. And so, the outcast species found sanctuary in humanity. Together, they thrived, proving that even in the darkest of times, there is always a way forward, if only you are willing to extend a hand to those in need. The galaxy had witnessed the fall of the Valorians, but now it would see their rise, powered not by their technology, but by the very humanity they once sought to conquer. The outcast species seeks sanctuary in humanity, Part 2. Months passed, and the once bleak atmosphere that surrounded the Valorians began to shift. On Earth, the Valorians integrated into society slowly but steadily. They were, in many ways, the perfect guests, silent observers of human culture, eager to help but cautious not to overstep. It was the humans, however, who offered them the greatest gift: the freedom to rediscover hope. Rin Vath, the Valorian captain who had led her people to Earth, found herself watching humanity with a mix of awe and wonder. Earth was a planet in the midst of so much turbulence: political upheaval, environmental crisis, social unrest, but despite these challenges, there was something raw and powerful about the human spirit. They didn't give up. They fought not just for survival but for a vision of a better world. Rin saw in them a reflection of the Valorians' former strength, a strength they had lost, buried beneath centuries of arrogance. One evening, as Rin walked through the bustling streets of New York, now part of the United Earth Coalition's most vibrant cities, she caught sight of a child, no older than 5, gripping her mother's hand as they passed by a holographic display showing Earth's current military efforts against an alien threat. It wasn't the usual display of power or dominance, but a message of resilience: together, we can stand strong. Rin stopped in her tracks, the image tugging at something deep inside her. She was so used to seeing war as a necessary means of survival, a tool to exert power. But humanity, with all its flaws, had found another way. The rebirth of Valoria. As the months turned to years, the Valorians didn't just adapt to Earth, they began to thrive in unexpected ways. They weren't just teaching humans their advanced technology, they were also learning from humanity's ability to adapt, to innovate, and to rebuild from the ashes of their own history. Valoria, the name they had once given to their home planet, now lived on in a new form, a symbol of rebirth. Rin worked tirelessly with human scientists, engineers, and diplomats to develop a way to help the Valorians find a new home. They couldn't return to their devastated world, but they could build a new one, this time, from the lessons they had learned. Humanity, in turn, was evolving alongside the Valorians. While Earth had its share of conflicts, the arrival of the Valorians had sparked something deeper: a unified front. Former adversaries found common ground in the quest to create a better future for all sentient beings. The United Earth Coalition, once a fragile alliance between warring nations, had become a beacon of hope for the entire planet. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about something much more profound. Rin, a voice called from behind her. It was Admiral Carla Hughes, her friend and ally in this unexpected partnership. The construction of the new Valorian colony is almost complete. I think we've done it. We've created a home for your people. Rin turned, her eyes still bright with the fire of hope she hadn't felt in a long time. A home, she repeated softly. Thank you. We did it together, Carla replied with a smile. That's what makes it special. The first colony on Mars. The colony on Mars was a testament to the power of cooperation. It was a place where both humans and Valorians worked side by side, sharing their knowledge and expertise to overcome the challenges of building a new world. What once seemed an impossible task, terraforming the harsh Martian landscape, had become a reality, with both species working tirelessly to create a breathable atmosphere, establish sustainable agriculture, and even harness the energy of Mars' twin moons. Rin Vath stood on the observation deck of the Valorian settlement on Mars, gazing out at the red planet stretching beyond. It had been years since the first tentative steps had been taken, and now the planet was a thriving community, a blend of Valorian ingenuity and human determination. The stars were still distant, but for the first time in a long while, Rin felt that her people had a chance, a real chance to rebuild what they had lost. Humanity had been their salvation, but the Valorians had also given Earth something invaluable, the knowledge that even the most lost species could find a place among the stars again. "Do you think we've earned our place here?" Rin asked quietly, her voice heavy with emotion. Carla, standing beside her, nodded. "I don't think anyone ever truly earns their place. You just take a chance on each other, and sometimes, that's enough." Rin smiled, looking out over the colony. The sky was beginning to lighten with the first hints of dawn, the Martian horizon painted in shades of crimson and gold. "Maybe that's the greatest lesson we could have learned. That sanctuary isn't about finding a perfect world, it's about creating one, together." The galactic message. As the Valorian colony on Mars flourished, so did the relationship between humanity and its new allies. Over time, their story began to spread across the galaxy, reaching far-off civilizations. The message was clear. It wasn't power or dominance that secured a species' place in the universe, but compassion, resilience, and the willingness to help one another. The galactic community, which had long viewed humanity as a fledgling species, now began to look to Earth as a beacon of hope. What had once been a solitary planet struggling to find its way in the cosmos was now a central figure in the universe's great narrative. And with the Valorians, who had once been outcasts, standing beside humanity, they showed the stars that sanctuary was possible for all who needed it. One by one, other species, whether fleeing war or environmental collapse, found their way to Earth or Mars, drawn by the message humanity and the Valorians had sent out. The galaxy, once a place of endless conflict, began to change, slowly, but with purpose. Rin Vath, looking out into the vast expanse of space once more, felt a profound sense of peace. The galaxy was still full of challenges, but Earth had proven something extraordinary, that even in the darkest of times, the light of hope could shine brightly enough to guide others home. And so, the Valorians, once outcasts, found their place in the universe, not as conquerors, but as partners, allies, and equals, and humanity, with all its imperfections, found that the true strength of a species wasn't in its weapons, but in the heart it offered to those in need. The Outcast Species Seeks Sanctuary in Humanity, Part 3. Years passed, and the alliance between humanity and the Valorians grew even stronger. What started as a desperate plea for sanctuary had blossomed into a flourishing partnership that stretched across two worlds, Earth and Mars. Together, they had overcome countless obstacles, and their bond had forged a path forward, not just for their two species, but for the galaxy at large. However, peace is never a permanent state in a universe as vast and unpredictable as theirs. As the humans and Valorians expanded their reach across space, they began to encounter other civilizations, some welcoming, some hostile, and others still unsure of what to make of these two species who had once been so different, yet now stood united. It was during one such encounter that the fragile peace of the alliance would be tested. The arrival of the Koroth. 1 year after the Valorians had established their colony on Mars, a new ship entered Earth's orbit. Unlike any ship the humans or Valorians had encountered, the vessel was enormous, its hull dark and covered in intricate, alien symbols. It arrived without warning, appearing on the radar screens like a ghost, and with a speed that suggested an advanced, hostile force behind it. The United Earth Coalition's military was immediately put on high alert. Admiral Carla Hughes, still leading Earth's defense, stood before her team, her expression grim. "We don't know who they are or where they come from, but we can't afford to take chances. Prepare to engage if necessary," she ordered. Though there was a hint of doubt in her voice, humanity had learned the value of diplomacy, but there were too many unknowns. The ship's occupants didn't offer any threats at first. In fact, they sent a cryptic message in an ancient dialect that none of Earth's translation systems could fully decode. It wasn't until a week later, after much negotiation and research, that the message finally became clear. We are the Korath, the last remnants of a dying empire. We seek refuge in your system, but there is one condition. You must prove that you are worthy of our trust. The Korath Challenge. The Korath were an ancient and powerful race, once rulers of an expansive empire that spanned across multiple star systems. They were a species known for their immense physical strength, unmatched combat skills, and a deeply rooted belief in superiority. Over time, their empire had crumbled, torn apart by internal strife and rebellion. Now, they were scattered, with only a handful of Korath remaining. Their arrival on Earth, while ominous, wasn't entirely a threat, it was a challenge. Rin Vath, the Valorian captain who had become a symbol of her species' rebirth, stood at the heart of the negotiations between the humans, Valorians, and Korath. As a representative of the Valorians, she had already proven the power of compassion and unity. But this was something different. The Korath demanded proof, not of technology, not of weapons, but of the very nature of humanity itself. They want to see if we truly understand the meaning of mercy, of sanctuary, Rin explained to Carla as they discussed the Koratha's demand. The Korath believe that only the strong survive, and that mercy is a weakness. They are testing us to see if we can be both strong and kind. Carla's brow furrowed. And if we fail? Rin hesitated, her mind replaying the Koratha's words, prove you are worthy. The threat of failure was implicit, and the consequences were unknown. We cannot fail, Rin said softly, her voice unwavering. Not for the Valorians, not for humanity. The trial of strength and spirit. The Korath presented their challenge in the form of a series of trials, tests of both physical prowess and moral fortitude. They were not simply looking for a show of strength, but for a demonstration that Earth's inhabitants, and by extension the Valorians, could balance their power with compassion, understanding, and the ability to lead without tyranny. The first trial was a brutal competition of combat. Volunteers from the human and Valorian forces stepped forward, including some of Earth's finest soldiers and Valorian warriors, who had trained their entire lives for battle. The Korath, fierce and seemingly unstoppable, tested their opponents in the arena. The trials were long and exhausting, but one thing became clear: neither the humans nor the Valorians fought solely for victory. They fought for each other. Despite the raw brutality of the combat, there was no malice. A human soldier would help a fallen Valorian warrior, and a Valorian would shield a human from a lethal blow. The Korath watched, their eyes narrowing, as they saw something they had never expected, a different kind of strength, a strength that came not from sheer violence, but from unity. For the final trial, the Korath presented an even more challenging test. They demanded that one representative from Earth and one from the Valorians embark on a mission to save a life, a Korath life. A wounded Korath warrior was left in the depths of a ravaged forest on a hostile moon, and only the human and Valorian volunteers could save them. The catch: they could not use their advanced technology or weaponry. Only their wits, their compassion, and their teamwork could save the Korath. Rin Vath volunteered without hesitation, joined by Carla Hughes, who had by now become more than an ally. She was a friend, a symbol of the human spirit. The two women, representing the best of their species, embarked on the mission together. It was a grueling journey, hostile terrain, alien creatures, and the constant reminder that every moment counted. But despite the odds, despite the many obstacles they faced, they found the Korath warrior, injured and stranded, and helped him to safety, using only their resourcefulness and their empathy. The Koratha's final decision. When they returned, the Korath gathered in their ship, silent and unblinking. The atmosphere was thick with tension as the Korath leader, an imposing figure named Ralek, stepped forward. He studied Rin and Carla with piercing eyes. "You have proven your strength," Ralek said, his voice deep and resonant. "But strength alone is not enough. You have also shown that you possess the one thing our empire lacked: compassion. You saved one of my people, not for glory, but because it was the right thing to do. You have shown mercy where others would show none." The Korath leader paused, his gaze shifting toward the vast expanse of space outside. Perhaps we were wrong. Perhaps there is another way. And with those words, the Koroth left Earth's orbit, not as invaders, but as allies. The challenge had been met, and the once proud Koroth species, having been humbled by the unity and compassion of the humans and Valorians, chose to join them. The Galactic Coalition. With the Koroth now part of the Alliance, Earth, Mars, and the Valorian colonies expanded their reach further into the stars. The Koroth brought with them their ancient knowledge of warfare, their fierce warriors, and their once-forgotten technologies. But more importantly, they brought a newfound belief in the power of mercy and understanding. And so, the story of humanity and the Valorians continued to resonate across the galaxy. They had proven that even in a universe filled with endless conflicts, there was hope, a hope that even the most unlikely of alliances could build a future. For in the end, it wasn't the strength of their weapons or the might of their armies that secured their place in the galaxy, but the strength of their hearts. The Valorians, once outcasts, had found sanctuary in humanity, and together, they had created a future that no one, human, Valorian, or Koroth, could have imagined alone. The outcast species seeks sanctuary in humanity, Part 4. The arrival of the Koroth marked a turning point not only for humanity and the Valorians, but for the entire galaxy. What was once a fractured, war-torn expanse of space was slowly, but surely, becoming something else, a place where species could come together, find common ground, and rebuild what had been lost. The story of the Koroth, the Valorians, and humanity was now one of hope, and the galaxy would never be the same again. Building the Galactic Coalition. With the Koroth now fully integrated into the Galactic Alliance, Earth, Mars, and the Valorian colonies took the next logical step, the creation of the Galactic Coalition. It would be a unified body, not just of humanity, the Valorians, and the Koroth, but of any species that shared the same vision for peace, cooperation, and mutual survival. The coalition was formed to protect vulnerable civilizations, ensure peace across the galaxy, and develop technologies that would be shared for the benefit of all. The Galactic Coalition was born in a council room set within the heart of Earth's new capital, a massive city that stood as the symbol of the alliance between the species. Representatives from every member world gathered around the table, each species bringing their unique talents, cultures, and philosophies to the fold. The challenges were immense, but there was a growing sense that this coalition was something new and unprecedented in galactic history. Admiral Carla Hughes, now the head of the newly formed Coalition Defense Force, addressed the assembly. "We are no longer isolated species, fighting for dominance. We are allies, bound by a shared understanding that our strength lies not just in our abilities, but in our capacity to work together." Today marks the beginning of a new era. Rin Vath, standing beside her, spoke next. "When the Valorians came to Earth, we were broken, lost, but you took us in. And now, together, we are building something none of us could have achieved alone. This coalition is a testament to the power of unity." The chamber erupted in applause, the representatives from dozens of species recognizing the significance of this moment. The galaxy was changing, and for the first time in a long while, the future seemed full of promise. The rise of a new threat. However, peace, as always, is fragile. The formation of the Galactic Coalition was not unnoticed by every species in the galaxy. There were factions, powerful ones, that saw the growing alliance as a threat, a challenge to their own dominance. The first sign of trouble came when a mysterious fleet appeared at the outer rim of the Coalition's influence. The fleet was not one of the known galactic species, nor did it resemble anything previously encountered. Its ships were enormous, black as void, and unmarked. 4 weeks. The fleet remained in the fringe systems, silent and unmoving, yet their presence alone was enough to unsettle the Coalition's member species. What were they waiting for, and who were they? Rin, standing alongside Carla in their command center on Mars, watched the latest reports come in. "These ships, they don't belong to any known species in the Coalition. They seem almost ancient. Could it be a remnant of some long-forgotten empire?" Carla asked, her face a mask of concern. "Or perhaps a new enemy we've never seen before?" Rin shook her head. "No, this is something different. Whoever they are, they're not just coming for territory. They're coming for something far worse." The unknown enemy. After a week of tense diplomacy and cautious surveillance, the mysterious fleet made their move. It didn't engage the coalition directly, there were no hostile actions, no attempts to destroy or invade. Instead, the fleet sent a single ship to Earth, a dark, silent vessel that landed in the heart of the capital. The communication that followed was chilling in its simplicity. "We are the Etherians. We have been watching you. The galaxy is ours to command, and your fragile alliance stands in our way. We will offer you a choice: submit, or be destroyed." The Etherians were a species none of the coalition's members recognized. Their ships were unlike anything anyone had ever seen, sleek, towering, and seemingly built from a material that defied understanding. They communicated telepathically, a mental presence that sent a shiver down the spines of all who encountered them. Admiral Hughes, Rin, and the other leaders of the Galactic Coalition convened immediately. "This is not a negotiation," Hughes said grimly. "They're testing our resolve, and if we give in, they'll just keep coming." The leaders of the coalition agreed. Etherians were an unknown threat, and they had made it clear that they weren't interested in dialogue. The time for diplomacy had passed. The coalition unites. The first wave of the Etherian assault came swiftly. The ships were nearly impossible to track, appearing out of nowhere, attacking without warning. But despite the overwhelming technology at the Etherians' disposal, they were not prepared for the unity of the Galactic Coalition. For the first time, the Valorians, humans, Karath, and other allied species stood side by side, their combined fleets forming a single, united front. The coalition's strategy was clear: fight not just with their weapons, but with their knowledge and ingenuity. Earth's engineers worked alongside Valorian strategists, Karath warriors fought with unexpected cooperation, and humanity's courage was the backbone that kept the fleet together. The battle raged across space, the sky littered with flashes of fire and sparks of energy. The Etherians' ships were formidable, their technology far more advanced than anything the coalition had encountered. But there was something the Etherians had underestimated: humanity's unpredictability. As the battle continued, Rin Vath led a daring strike mission into the heart of the Etherian fleet, alongside a small group of Valorian warriors and human pilots. Their mission was to find the heart of the Etherian fleet, its command ship, and disable it. Through sheer will and determination, they infiltrated the enemy lines, launching surprise strikes that crippled Etherian technology. It wasn't a victory born of brute force, but one of strategy, adaptability, and the resilience of the species involved. The Etherians had made a grave mistake by underestimating their foes. Victory and a new hope. In the end, the Etherians were not defeated through sheer strength alone. The victory came when the leaders of the coalition, using a combination of intelligence and diplomacy, managed to turn the Etherians' own technology against them. The Etherian fleet faltered, its command ship disabled, and the remaining forces withdrew. The galaxy was safe this time. Rin Vath stood before the gathered leaders of the Galactic Coalition, her heart still racing from the intensity of the battle. She looked out over the expanse of space, a sense of pride welling up inside her. "We have proven something today," she said softly, her voice steady but filled with emotion, "that no matter how powerful an enemy may be, there is always a way to stand together, and together, we are unstoppable." Carla Hughes nodded, a knowing smile on her face. "The galaxy may be vast, but as long as we remain united, there is nothing we can't face. We've fought for this peace, and we will continue to fight for it, for every species that wants to live free, without fear." The victory was celebrated across the galaxy, not just as a military triumph, but as a symbol of what the Galactic Coalition had become: a testament to the power of unity, compassion, and strength. As the stars gleamed in the sky, the members of the coalition knew that the galaxy was still a place of vast challenges, but together, they would face whatever came next, for the future they were building was one of peace, cooperation, and hope. The Outcast species seeks sanctuary in humanity, Part 5. The victory against the Etherians had solidified the Galactic Coalition's strength, but it had also revealed a deeper truth: their enemies were not just distant invaders, but an indication of the larger challenges ahead. As the galaxy's newest alliance, the coalition's resolve would be constantly tested, but the coalition's strength lay not only in its unity but in its ability to learn from every encounter, to grow from its trials. While the Etherian threat had been neutralized, their presence had opened a new chapter of galactic diplomacy, one that would soon test the very ideals the coalition was built upon. The Council of Shadows. A few months after the battle, the leaders of the Galactic Coalition had gathered once again, this time on Mars. The peaceful, thriving colony was now the beating heart of the coalition, and its leaders met in the Council Hall, an enormous structure built from the resources of Earth, Mars, and the Valorian colonies. Admiral Carla Hughes stood at the front of the council room, addressing the gathered representatives of the coalition. "We've weathered the storm. We defeated the Etherians, but there is more at stake than just military might. Now, we face something we cannot fight with ships and guns. There is a force in the galaxy far more dangerous than any fleet of warships. We face the Council of Shadows." A murmur ran through the room. The Council of Shadows had existed in whispers for centuries, a secretive and powerful faction whose influence spanned across countless worlds. Few had ever encountered them directly, but rumors swirled about their vast networks of spies, their political manipulation, and their control over key sectors of the galaxy's commerce and information. "The Council doesn't wage open war," Carla continued. "Instead, they infiltrate, they manipulate, and they play species against each other for control. Their methods are subtle, and their reach is long, but if we allow them to continue unchecked, they will undermine everything we've worked for." Rin Vath, now a revered leader in both the Valorian and Coalition circles, stepped forward. "We cannot allow ourselves to be divided by their schemes. This fight will not be won with weapons alone. It will be won by trust, by standing together against the forces that wish to turn us against each other." Rin's words were powerful, and for a moment, there was silence. The room was full of species who had once fought for dominance, but now, they were all bound by a single goal: to protect the peace they had painstakingly built. "Then we need to find them," Rin said, "and we need to act before they can do any more damage." The Shadow War. The coalition quickly set into motion a covert operation to uncover the true nature of the Council of Shadows. But this would not be a simple military conflict. The shadows were everywhere, in governments, corporations, and even the ranks of the coalition itself. It was a war fought not in the open, but in the shadows of space and within the minds of its people. The coalition formed a special task force, composed of the finest intelligence agents from each member species. They worked in secrecy, infiltrating the dens of the Council's power. But what they found was more troubling than they had anticipated. The Shadows were not a single species or faction, they were a coalition in their own right. A conglomerate of multiple species and powers, each with its own agenda. Some had been in the Council since its inception, while others had joined more recently, seeing an opportunity for profit, influence, or revenge. The Council of Shadows had one goal above all else: control. They manipulated economic systems, created divisions between species, and secretly supported groups that thrived on chaos. Their webs of deceit stretched across the galaxy, and every time the coalition thought they were making progress, they were forced to deal with a new crisis the Shadows had orchestrated. One of the greatest threats came when a faction within the Shadows orchestrated a coup on a peaceful planet in the outer rim of coalition space. The coup was swift, brutal, and bloody, with key figures within the planet's leadership assassinated. The Shadow operatives who had taken over presented the planet with an ultimatum: join the Council's cause, or face utter destruction. Rin and Carla, both deeply invested in protecting the fragile peace of the coalition, led a task force to the planet. They faced not only armed insurgents but a sophisticated campaign of misinformation, turning the population against itself. It was a war fought in both the streets and in the hearts of those they sought to protect. The cost of unity. As the Shadow War escalated, the members of the Galactic Coalition began to question how long they could hold on. The demands of unity were straining them. The humans, the Valorians, the Koroth, and the other species of the Coalition had learned to cooperate. But as the war with the Shadows grew more brutal, old wounds started to resurface. On a strategic mission deep within Coalition-controlled space, Rin found herself in a heated debate with a Valorian commander. "We are losing resources. Every world we free from the Shadows requires more time, more energy, more lives," the commander said, his voice tight with frustration. "We cannot keep doing this. The humans are too weak to carry their weight. They don't understand the gravity of this war." Rin's eyes narrowed. And you think abandoning them will solve the problem? Humanity may not have the same military strength as the Valorians or the Karath, but they have something more powerful: resilience. They understand the importance of standing together. It's not the size of the army that wins a war. It's the strength of the alliances you build. The Valorian commander shook his head. We should be focusing on fighting the shadows, not worrying about their politics. We need to be more decisive. I disagree, Rin replied. We are fighting for something greater than victory. We are fighting for the future of the galaxy. The turning tide. The battle against the Council of Shadows was one of endurance, patience, and immense sacrifice. But slowly, the tides began to turn. The Coalition's task force managed to infiltrate the core of the Shadows' operations, unraveling key intelligence that linked them to their financiers and their hidden strongholds. The Shadows had underestimated the power of unity and trust, something they had no concept of. The final confrontation came on the outskirts of a forgotten sector of the galaxy, a place where the Council of Shadows had hidden their command center. The Coalition's fleet, now fully united in purpose, descended upon the sector. As they breached the Shadow stronghold, a series of strategic strikes dismantled the Council's infrastructure. But the Shadow's leader, a figure known only as the Veiled One, was not easily captured. In the final moments, Rin Vath stood face to face with the enigmatic leader, whose true identity remained shrouded in mystery. The Veiled One's voice echoed in Rin's mind, a cold, calculating presence. Do you really believe this alliance can last? You, who were once outcasts, now leading a galactic empire? All empires fall. Valorian, you cannot escape that truth. Rin stood firm. Perhaps, but we don't build empires. We build communities. We fight for each other. And that's something you'll never understand. With the fall of the Council of Shadows came not only the end of an era of manipulation and corruption, but the beginning of a new chapter for the Galactic Coalition. It was a chapter forged in the fires of adversity, where trust, cooperation, and the willingness to stand together in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds became the foundation for a lasting peace. The Outcast species seeks sanctuary in humanity, Part 6. The era following the fall of the Council of Shadows was one of unprecedented cooperation. The Galactic Coalition had proven itself not only as a military force but as a beacon of hope for those who had once feared domination by the powerful factions of the galaxy. The Etherians' defeat, the successful dismantling of the Council of Shadows, and the unity between humanity, the Valorians, and the Karath set a new precedent. However, peace, as always, was delicate, and new challenges began to emerge from unexpected corners of the galaxy. The Unknown Heralds. Months after the Shadow's fall, the Coalition's members worked tirelessly to consolidate their victory. Trade routes between worlds flourished, knowledge was exchanged freely, and new alliances were formed with species who had once been neutral or on the fringes of galactic affairs. But in the quiet corners of the galaxy, something was stirring. A strange signal, originating from a distant part of the galaxy, was intercepted by one of the Coalition's deep space listening posts. At first, it was nothing more than a series of enigmatic radio bursts, patterns that didn't seem to match any known form of communication. But soon, it became clear that these signals were deliberate. They were a message, not of words, but of shapes and sequences, a pattern that required decoding. Rin Vath, now a senior member of the Galactic Council and the Valorian delegation, was the first to be called upon to investigate. She sat in the control room of the Council's flagship, the Aegis, with Carla Hughes and the rest of the senior leadership team. The air was thick with anticipation as scientists and linguists worked on the code. It's not like anything we've encountered before, one of the linguists said, running his fingers over the holographic projections of the strange symbols. It's almost as if they're trying to communicate, but without words. There's something unfamiliar about it. Carla leaned over the scientist's shoulder, her eyes narrowing. What does it mean? We can't be sure yet, but we think it's an invitation, the linguist replied, an invitation to something larger. Rin frowned, her hands resting on the edge of the console. A new species? Or something else? The message doesn't feel hostile, but it's also too sophisticated to be a simple call for help. Carla nodded. Whatever it is, we need to know more. The decoding process took days, but as the pattern unraveled, the message grew clearer. It was a summons, a call to a gathering of ancient powers, an invitation to the Galactic Coalition to participate in a council of advanced civilizations. The invitation was clear: the heralds have arrived. The heralds. The name heralds carried with it an air of mystery. The Council of Shadows had always been a looming presence in the galaxy. But the heralds were different. According to the decoded message, the heralds were an ancient order, one that predated most modern civilizations in the galaxy. They were described as both protectors and enforcers of balance. A group that had once helped shape the galaxy's current power structures but had since disappeared from galactic history. A fleet of ships, unlike any seen before, arrived on the edge of Coalition space. The ships were massive, their structures resembling organic growths more than traditional starcraft. Their hulls pulsed with light, shifting in patterns that seemed to respond to the stars themselves. These were not machines, nor were they biological life forms. They were something else entirely. The first encounter between the Heralds and the Galactic Coalition was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. Their ships did not land or dock as other fleets had. Instead, they hovered above the planet's surface, their presence causing electromagnetic pulses that sent tremors through every technological device on the surface. In a vast, open expanse, an emissary from the Heralds appeared, an entity composed of energy and light, its form ever-changing, like a living constellation. The emissary's voice echoed not in sound, but in the minds of those who stood before it. "We are the Heralds," it said, its voice resonating with both authority and ancient wisdom. "We have watched the rise and fall of civilizations. We have seen the struggle for power, the thirst for control, and the relentless cycle of war. You, the Coalition, have shown us something different, a unity born not from conquest, but from understanding. But you are not yet ready." The emissary's form shifted, flickering like the light of a distant star. "We have come to test you." The test of unity. The Herald's presence was unlike any challenge the Galactic Coalition had faced. It wasn't a war or a skirmish, but a philosophical and spiritual test, one that would stretch the very ideals the Coalition had fought so hard to build. The Heralds didn't demand resources or territory. Instead, they sought to understand the true nature of the Coalition's unity. Could it withstand the trials of time, the conflicts within, and the hidden tensions that might threaten it? The emissary revealed that the Heralds had long been the arbiters of balance in the galaxy, but they had withdrawn when they saw the rise of empires based on power and fear. The Coalition's success was remarkable, but the Heralds saw cracks beneath the surface, old wounds that had not fully healed, and new divides forming where unity was supposed to exist. "True peace," the Heralds intoned, "can only be achieved when the bonds between species are tested beyond mere alliance. You must prove that you are capable of enduring your differences, that your unity is forged not just in the light of mutual interest, but in the willingness to embrace what divides you." Rin, now representing the Valorians in the council, spoke up, her voice calm but unwavering. "You ask us to prove our unity, but we are already united. We have survived wars, challenges, and betrayals to reach this point. We may not be perfect, but we've learned. We know what it means to stand together." The emissary's form flickered again, responding in ways both comforting and unnerving. "Your words are wise, Valorian, but words are not enough. Unity must be tested in action. We will give you trials, trials that will test the very core of your cooperation, the depths of your trust, and the strength of your resolve." The trials. The Herald set forth a series of trials, each designed to challenge the Coalition in different ways, physically, emotionally, and philosophically. The first trial involved a simulated environmental catastrophe on a distant planet, where the Coalition had to work together to save an entire ecosystem. The task seemed simple at first: redirect water, replant forests, and ensure the balance of the local atmosphere. But as they worked, they discovered that the ecosystem was far more complex than they had realized. Every decision they made had far-reaching consequences, forcing them to navigate delicate choices that tested their willingness to compromise. The second trial was a test of loyalty. The Heralds separated the members of the Coalition and placed them in situations where they had to choose between personal gain and the greater good. Some species were tempted by offers of power, others by knowledge or technology. The challenge was not just to resist the temptations, but to understand the true meaning of sacrifice for the sake of the collective. The third trial was a wargame scenario where the coalition had to defend a vulnerable world from an unseen enemy. The catch? The enemy was within. The heralds planted agents within the coalition ranks, creating subtle divisions and distrust. The trial tested not just their tactical abilities but their trust in each other. Only by uncovering the traitors and working together could they succeed. The final test.